Hello, Tapas sir.
Hello.
Huh, sir. I'm going to start.
Start. Okay.
Good.
Excellent. So, very good evening to all. So, today we are going to discuss an article that is published in JAMA Neurology on a very contentious topic regarding discontinuation of anti-epileptic drugs at the time of discharge in babies with acute symptomatic seizures. So, we all have faced difficulty and often have continued anti-epileptic drug at the time of discharge, particularly in babies with acute symptomatic seizures, when either neurological examination is not abnormal or EEG is showing abnormal epileptiform discharges, or babies who require multiple AEDs to control seizures during NICU stay. The same situation even continues at the time of follow-up when we often get stuck as to whether to continue or discontinue anti-epileptic drug. So today we'll try to see whether this article is able to provide us an answer to this important clinical question. So today we have with us speaker Dr. Dipendra Yadav. He is working as a DM senior resident in the Department of Neonatology at Dr. RML Hospital, New Delhi. So he will be presenting the journal, and the statistics part will be covered by Dr. Pranay Mall, and Dr. Pranay is working as a third year DM senior resident in the Department of Neonatology at RML Hospital, New Delhi. So over to Dr. Dipender.
Thank you, sir. Before good evening, and before going to present Journal Club, I am going to thankful my HOD ma'am, Dr. Arti Maria ma'am, and my moderator, Dr. Tapar sir, to guide me to such a way so I am able to present this seminar. The today journal is safety of early discontinuation of anti-seizure medication after acute symptomatic neonatal seizure. And this published in JAMA Neurology in May 2021. Acute symptomatic neonatal seizure, that is hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, ischemic stroke, intracranial hemorrhage owing to brain injury are often self-limited. However, survivors are at risk for post-neonatal epilepsy. Acute symptomatic neonatal seizure, although remit within 72 hours, but infant continue to be on anti-seizure medication maintained for months because of risk of subsequent seizure and epilepsy. Phenobarbital is most common anti-epileptic drug to manage neonatal seizure despite having potential neurotoxic effect, and a study has shown it to be associated with lower cognitive score when used in long term. However, WHO recommends that clinicians should consider discontinue ASM without a taper after 72 hours of seizure-free period for neonate with normal neurological examination and EEG. And this is great summary table of different outcome of all outcome quality, and for all outcome quality of evidence are low and number of studies are also less. So result from a small and single center study suggests that early ASM discontinuance for acute seizure is not harmful. However, this practice has not been widely adapted, including at neonatal seizure registry center. Parent of affected neonate also identify ASM treatment duration as a high priority research topic. And the research question are the population are infant with acute symptomatic neonatal seizure. Interventions are duration of anti-seizure medicine treatment. Comparison ASM discontinue versus ASM maintained at time of discharge from the neonatal seizure admission. And outcome are functional neurodevelopment at age of 24 months. Hypothesis: infant whose ASM was discontinued would have no difference in functional neurodevelopment when assessed at 24 months compared to those whom ASM was maintained at discharge. Including criteria, the seizure had an acute symptomatic cause and conventional EEG confirmed seizure at the study center or referring hospital, or treated with ASM for clinical events suspected to be a seizure if the clinical history, including semiological feature, supported the diagnosis of seizure. The exclusion criteria: neonate with event that were determined not to be a seizure based on history, semiological feature, or EEG were not enrolled. Neonate with transient reversible seizure cause, that is hyponatremia, hypocalcemia, or hypoglycemia without brain injury, or neonatal onset epilepsy syndrome. And for this part, I am over to my senior, Varnesh sir.
Good evening, everyone. Now we are going to discuss in brief about the study design and some aspects of stats used in this study. This study was a prospective observational multi-center study, and patients were enrolled at 9 neonatal seizure registry centers. This was a comparative effectiveness study of infants with acute symptomatic neonatal seizure that were inborn patient as well as patient visited in OPD clinics between July 2015 and March 2018. Since it was a comparative effectiveness study, the study followed the Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute (PCORI) specified guidelines for comparative effectiveness study. PCORI is a non-profit, non-government organization that is situated in Washington, DC, and it was established in 2010. Now, why there is need for Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute? Basically, in healthcare, many of the questions are answered by traditional research method. Like in this example, if we want to do a drug trial of a new anti-seizure medication, drug A, then in this drug trial, intervention group receives drug A and control group receives a placebo. Then efficacy and side effects are compared in the two groups, but a priori we know that the placebo is here for only placebo effect, and it is usually not going to cause any benefit or harm. In this condition, whether the drug A is beneficial or not, we can get the answer by using traditional research method. But scenario is not always the same. Like the question we are addressing in this study was initially addressed in 2009 when National Institute of Health planned an RCT, and this RCT compared phenobarbital versus placebo for 4 months after resolution of acute symptomatic seizure. What happened in this study? That prior to this study, parents as well as clinicians were very well informed that anti-seizure medication group may have less risk of postnatal seizure if phenobarbital is continued. But again, at the same time, clinicians and parents were very well also informed that the phenobarbital may have neuronal damage and hence may have neurodevelopmental impairment. And in this study, in both the group, intervention group as well as in control group, parents as well as clinicians were reluctant to be enrolled depending upon their own region, whether they are considering phenobarbital as a benefit or phenobarb as a harm. Similarly, we cannot do RCT in which one limb receives expressed breast milk versus direct breastfeeding versus formula, because we already know that the breastfeeding is already a standard of care and we cannot compare EBM versus formula and plan an RCT. Hence, the patient-centered outcome research institute guidelines are to improve the quality and relevance of evidence in those scenarios where decision making is difficult and standard of care is not available, to help parents, healthcare workers, and policymakers by using comparative research analysis. Thus, comparative effectiveness research ultimately is a generation and synthesis of evidence that compares the benefits and harms of alternative methods to prevent, diagnose, treat, and monitor a clinical condition or to improve the delivery of care. In some RCTs, systemic reviews and meta-analysis, comparative effectiveness research can be done when both the limbs are new to exposed population and none of them are standard of care. Now, comparative effectiveness research in observational studies. Observational studies are particularly useful when RCTs are not feasible, as we discussed in previous studies when RCT of phenobarbital continuing versus phenobarbital stoppage were not possible. And but the problem, what happened that this in this observational study, mostly decision making is decided by clinician and parents, and data for the study is taken from hospital records followed by statistical analysis. But in the observational analysis, main problem is selection bias, and to overcome the selection bias, basically three methods are given. First is propensity score analysis, second is multivariable regression analysis, and third is instrumental variable analysis. We will discuss all these three methods one by one. First is propensity score analysis. Let us assume that two patients are admitted in NICU. Patient A was admitted at term gestation with HI stage 2, had one episode of seizure on day 1, and but patient was gradually stabilized, needed therapeutic hypothermia but gradually stabilized, and patient improved rapidly. At discharge, neurological examination was within normal range, and initial EEG monitoring was within normal range. At the same time, patient B was again admitted in the same NICU at term gestation, was admitted as a case of HI stage 3. Patient had recurrent seizure activity on day 1, ventilated, received therapeutic hypothermia. Patient had abnormal EEG in burst suppression pattern. At discharge, severe hypotonia was there, and in neuroimaging, intracranial bleed was reported. Now, first question arises in our mind that should we stop ASM or not? And if yes, who is the ideal candidate for stopping anti-seizure medication, whether patient A or patient B? And I think most of us will answer that patient A may be an ideal candidate for stopping anti-seizure medication at discharge, and patient B, most of us will continue with anti-seizure medication. And this tendency of stopping or continuing anti-seizure medication depending upon the clinical scenario is known as propensity. Similarly, let us take an example of this study. Suppose this further details of the study will be discussed by Dipinder, but suppose, for example, 9 patients are enrolled from serial number 1 to 9, and first 4 patients were continued on anti-seizure medication at discharge. These 4 are these 4 patients are continued on anti-seizure medication at discharge, and these last 5 patients were stopped on anti-seizure medication at discharge. Now, if we assess VDI-FS score at 24 month of age, then depending upon only continuing or stoppage of ASM medication, then this will be non-adjusted raw analysis of data, but we cannot decide VDFS score based on a single parameter, that is whether ASM was continued or ASM has stopped, because there are multiple other variables that may affect VDFS score or neurodevelopmental outcome at 24 month of age, like severe hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, abnormal EEG, intracranial bleed, abnormal neurological examination. And depending on the presence or absence of all these variables in individual patients, regression analysis is done and propensity scores are derived for each and every patient. Like for if let us assume that propensity score is 0.968 for patient 1, for 2.824, and similarly 1.1 and further, then after deriving a propensity score, we do matching, and matching is a kind of randomization in observational study. Like for propensity score of 0.968, that is the propensity score of patient 1, patient 7 is also having a propensity score of 0.967. Hence, we can assume that based on all the variables that may affect the neurodevelopmental outcome, patient 1 is a perfect match of patient 7, except that the patient 1 was continued on ASM and patient 7 was stopped on ASM. Similarly, patient 2 is a perfect match of patient 6, and patient 4 is a perfect match of patient 8. But for patient 3, the propensity score, suppose that it is 1.1, we are not getting another propensity score in these 9 patients. Suppose if the study is going on and if we didn't find any propensity score of 1.1 in any patient, then this patient will be excluded from the propensity score based propensity score adjusted analysis. So ultimately, propensity score analysis improves causal association by taking care of known confounding variables. And to summarize, key steps in propensity score analysis are: first, regression analysis is used to create initial propensity model. Then, based on the later followed by final model, confounding variables are identified in final model. Then propensity score is generated. Based on propensity score, matching is done between the groups to ensure distribution of variables, and propensity score adjusted groups are created for analysis, that is a representative of true groups. Now, this initial model was compared with machine learning artificial intelligence method, that is the least absolute shrinkage and selection operator. And this method also suggested that the results were similar as derived by the regression method. And ultimately, these 6 variables were observed in this study that may affect VDFS score based on the propensity scoring. First was gestational age. Second was worst EEG background during first 24 hours of recording. Third was number of calendar days with EEG seizure. Fourth was treatment with therapeutic hypothermia. Fifth, discharge neurological examination. And sixth was seizure etiology. What are the benefits of propensity score analysis? That it helps understanding the degree of overlap in baseline characteristics and other variables that may affect outcome. And previous studies have suggested that previous propensity score analysis can remove more than 90% of bias in observational study. But the problem with propensity score analysis is that as we can make propensity score model for known variables only, and it will not care of it will not take care of unknown variables or bias that was well taken care in randomized control study. And in matching, some patients may left behind as there were no propensity score matching for them, as we looked in the example for patient 3, for patient 5, for patient 9. And actual sample size may be substantially reduced, and hence the power of study may be reduced. Now, second method for overcoming selection bias in observational study is the multiple regression analysis. In the same way, it is to control for known factor when estimating the association of exposure or variable of interest with outcome. Problem is again the same. Unknown variables cannot be accounted for, and the strength of association depends on the quality of variable. Third method used for taking care of selection bias in observational studies is the instrumental variable quasi-randomization. The instrumental variable quasi-randomization is actually a method of a crude conversion of an observational study into a kind of randomized study based on an instrumental variable. And in this study, some analysis were done by using a center as instrumental variable. And since patients are randomized here, then it is assumed to take care of both known and unknown confounder, but it is only assumed to take care of all these factors or not, it is not known. And an ideal instrumental variable is one that affects treatment only, not the risk factors or outcome of interest. But the problem with instrumental variable, it seems name seems fancy, but actual problem is that choosing the right variable is a very difficult job. And again, depending on the identified instrumental variable, accounting its presence or absence, again, sample size can be reduced. In this study, another analysis was done for missing data analysis, because this study was based on hospital records and many of the data were missing at the time of analysis. And this missing data analysis was done to overcome the problem. Basically, two missing data analysis methods were used. One was single imputation method and another was multiple imputation method. Single imputation method is basically used when only a few data is missing. And there are various methods for single imputation analysis, like if suppose that a data is missing, then the last observation is carried forward, or the baseline observation is carried forward. In hot deck method, in the same study, if all other variables are same, then data is taken from that individual patient. In cold deck method, data is selected from previous studies, and mean substitution, mean of all values is used to replace the data. And multiple imputation methods are used when multiple data sets are missing. What we do in multiple imputation method, based on the single imputation method, we do various number of simple imputation methods, and depending upon this simple imputation method, for the lost variable, we fill multiple variables, and again multiple number of analysis are done, and all these analysis results are pooled for final outcome in multiple imputation method. In this missing data analysis, multiple imputation was used to estimate the primary outcome after accounting for loss to follow-up, and for SM treatment duration, single imputation method was used. Now I will pass to Dr. Dipender for further presentation.
Thank you, sir. Primary outcome are functional neurodevelopment at age of 24 months, measured with the Warner Initial Developmental Evaluation of Adaptive and Functional Skill, that is UDIFS, and post-neonatal epilepsy and functional motor impairment are secondary outcome. And these are the UDIFS chart. It show the total item score are 15 and maximum score of 200, and the higher the score, better will be the outcome. And this study conduct to validate UDIFS against gold standard Bailey score, and results show UDIFS score were significantly associated with Bailey 3 score in all domain, and lower the score on the UDIFS were significantly associated with the increase the risk of adverse developmental performance on the all domain of the Bailey score. Neonate were enrolled after parent providing informed and written consent. Statistical analysis using non-inferiority design, setting the margin at 7% of the 24-month average UDIFS score of 172, that is 12 point. And the margin was conservative and clinically significant threshold as developmental delay greater than 33%. Required a child to refer to assess developmental service. Under the above assumption, it was estimated that 116 children required to have 0.8 power, that the lower the limit of the two-sided 90% of confidence interval would be above the priori non-informative limit. An initial funding period allow 12 months follow-up, which require a large sample size. So follow-up was extended to 24 months and cohort of 300 newborn was finalized. And for allowed to take into account loss of follow-up, propensity score adjustment, as well as assess secondary outcome associated with family well-being and long-term outcome. The Fisher-Exact test was used for difference between categorical variable, and ANOVA is used for difference between continuous variable for normally distributed data, and Kruskal value are used for continuous variable in non-normally distributed data. And analysis were conducted in a Stata version, and all the tests were set at the significant level of p-value less than 0.05. This is participant follow. Initially, 305 participants are enrolled, in which 150 are inpatient, 155 are outpatient. Initially, 2 are excluded because did not meet the inclusion criteria, and so finally 303 include in propensity analysis. And in 303, 21 neonates are lost to follow-up. So overall 282 totally analyzed, and 272 analyzed at the 24 month of evaluation. This is the baseline characteristic. The 84% of neonates are a term neonate because the most common cause of the acute symptomatic seizure is HIE. In seizure cause, HIE is 43%, ischemic stroke in 26%, intracranial hemorrhage in 18%, other cause will be 13%. And worst EEG background was 8% is normally, 66 neonate is mild to moderate, 17% is severely abnormal, and statal epilepsy at 8%. And at study centers, EEG seizure frequency, they are normal in 17% of the neonate, in which EEG normal, but on the basis of clinical basis, there will be use of anti-epileptic drug. And phenobarbital, 90% of the neonate will use phenobarbital, that is the most common anti-epileptic drug. And therapeutic hypothermia using 28% of the baby. Abnormal neurological examination result at discharge in 31% of them. Among neonate whose ASM were discontinued, that is 30% of the neonate before hospital discharge, median treatment duration was 6 days. And among children whose ASM were maintained, that is 64% of the neonate, median treatment duration was 4 months. And this is primary and secondary outcome table. At a 24 month VIDIA-FS score, after adjusting, there is 90% of confidence interval between -3 to 11, which has the priori non-inferiority limit of -12. And post-neonatal epilepsy, total number of baby developed post-neonatal epilepsy is 37, in which 11 are on discontinued medication and 14 in maintained group. And adjusted OD ratio is 1.5, and 90% of the confidence interval between 0.7 to 3.4, which is clinical, which is statistically insignificant. In subgroup analysis, in preterm infant propensity adjusted VDI-FS score difference was 14 point higher among two group, and infant with HIE propensity adjusted VDI-FS score difference was 10 point higher among two group. In using center as a instrumental variable, propensity adjusted VDI-FS scored 3 point higher among those who ASM were discontinued versus maintained at hospital discharge. Using odd percent versus in percent, propensity adjusted VDI-FS score 9 point higher among those whose ASM were discontinued versus maintained at hospital discharge. Epilepsy, 13% of infants develop epilepsy before 24 months. Median age at epilepsy was 7 months, and no infant with normal EEG background develop epilepsy, and 7% with the normal neurological examination at discharge develop epilepsy. None of the children classified as low risk according to WHO develop epilepsy, compared with 14% of the children who were not low risk. And no difference in risk of epilepsy or timing of epilepsy onset by ASM treatment duration in unadjusted analysis, and no difference in risk of epilepsy or age of epilepsy by ASM treatment group after the adjustment analysis. And this is a Kaplan-Meier curve. It clearly shows that neonates survive without epilepsy are higher among the discontinued group versus maintained group, but it is statistically significant. That is hazard ratio, not statistically non-significant. That is hazard ratio 95% confidence interval between 0.4 to 1.5. Motor function. 16% had gross motor function classification system score greater than 2, with no difference by ASM treatment duration group, and after adjusted analysis, there is also no difference in gross motor functional classification system score greater than 2 by ASM treatment duration group. Result support stopping of ASM at discharge was not associated with adverse functional development at 24 months of age. No significant association between ASM treatment duration and development of post-neonatal epilepsy or gross motor functional 24 months of the age. And discontinuation of ASM is safe in acute symptomatic seizure prior to discharge. However, WHO recommend to consider discontinue anti-seizure medicine without a taper after 72 hours of the seizure freedom for neonate with a normal neurological examination and EEG background. This study expand recommendation to include all neonates with acute symptomatic seizure, even in setting of abnormal EEG and neurological examination. And adopting this approach may be evidence-based change in practice for many clinicians. And all 11 children with early onset unprovoked seizure were on ASM maintained at discharge, in which one third of with epilepsy onset before 4 months developed infantile spasm, for which phenobarbital leverage stamp are ineffective. Neonate in whom ASM were discontinued prior to discharge on an average 28 mg per kg less exposure to phenobarbital than for whom it was maintained. Extent of a study, it is a multi-center study, comparative effectiveness research, increasing the robustness of the result. VDI-FS score was chosen for its ease of telephonic administration or concurrent validity with Bailey 3. Propensity analysis enhanced causal association by adjusting key clinical covariant that may affect clinician choice regarding ASM treatment duration. Limitation, there was no significant difference in epilepsy among the treatment duration group, but the cohort size does not allow to exclude a difference of up to 3.4 times the odds of developing epilepsy before age of 24 months. So larger, longer term study are needed. Follow-up limited to 24 months. Hence, the risk of epilepsy after diet period is inconclusive. 17% of included neonates did not have EEG seizure, which is considered to be a gold standard in study evaluating the antiepileptic drug. 57 infants with a stroke were maintained on ASM after discharge. Only 22 infants had ASM discontinued. This small number of rendered the conclusion of the outcome in the stroke group